Evening. I'd like to call the planning board meeting of May 10th, 2016 to order. The first thing on the agenda is the minutes from April 26th.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the minutes of April 26, 2016 as corrected.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Approved. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is Sheila Duarte Andrade Realty Trust create 8 lots on Timothy Bourne Cartway, map 32-101-015A, Falmouth Engineering.
Yeah, recognize.
We don't have to have a hearing on this.
Well, but somebody's here to speak, so.
Okay, yes? go
Hi,
ahead.
good evening. Thank you through the chair. My name is Brian Wall, for the record. I'm an attorney in Sandwich, and I represent the applicant before you. I do understand that it's the board's practice not to regularly accept testimony on these A&R applications, but I just wanted to stand up and introduce myself and tell you that we believe that this project is entitled to your endorsement under Chapter 41, Section 81L, because the plan shows lots that have adequate frontage and adequate area under zoning on a way that was created before subdivision control was accepted by the town, and that has sufficient grade and sufficient construction for the traffic that is proposed. And I'd be happy to take any questions. We believe it complies with the law.
I don't have any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have one. I see the width of the cartway has been increased to 28 feet, is that correct?
It has, yes.
And that's a non-paved area, is that correct?
It's non-paved, but it's been improved with gravel to take the traffic that's expected.
And that's increased from the last time we saw these drawings?
Yes.
Thank you.
And if you have any specific technical questions, Mr. Borselli is here. He's the engineer that drew the plan.
So I have a question. So I consulted with planning staff today to try to understand the minimum requirements for approval not required. And I got a list of things to check off. One is the adequacy of the way. Sufficient width is one thing, but adequate construction. Now, typically, we see roads that are paved in developments, and I see you have gravel way, and it is wider than the previous applicant asked us to go out for a site review a year or more ago. It is wider, but there are some other questions we have, like public utilities and whether there's road drainage required. I don't think there is, because it's a gravel road and it's pretty flat. But the final question is any planning board supervision necessary from here on out? Or do we just say, go ahead and do whatever you want? So to me, that's the question I'm wrestling with. It seems when I traveled the way, I went past where they indicated there was no real markings other than a series of what looked like corners of lot markings. But there was 4 on each side here, but then as I went down the cartway, there was quite a lot more in other areas that I guess are not related to this application.
I'd have to have Mr. Borselli answer the question.
Well, it's not related to this, but it just,
Yeah.
in my view of the property, it made me say, it seems like potential for a lot more development than what's on your plan and in your package. So it just seems like seems to me that more planning board input or review would be appropriate, and why would you think that that's not the case?
So if I could point you to the law, I actually have a handout, if I could approach the board. It's just the law, so it's not any new information. And to answer, well, I'll wait till I'm at the microphone for the record. comes to A&R endorsement, the law at issue is Chapter 41, Section 81L, and I'll paraphrase it, but it's very close to the exact language. It says that if the lots shown on the plan before the board have adequate frontage as required by zoning, the linear distance that is in the area, and they are on a way in existence when the subdivision law control became effective in the town, having sufficient width, adequate grades, and then this is the key language that I think your question pertains to, adequate construction to provide for the needs of vehicular traffic in relation to the proposed use of the land abutting thereon. So I think to answer your question directly, the board has discretion and must reach its opinion that the way at issue is sufficient for the traffic needs for the land shown on the plan. If there is future development beyond the scope of the plan, that would be subject to another application, subject to the same kind of scrutiny that if there's more traffic, there might be more need for improvement. But the A&R plan, the A&R law does recognize that if there are these old ancient ways that existed prior to the subdivision control law becoming effective, and they are suitable, in the opinion of the board, for the traffic that they will serve, they can be endorsed A&R endorsement.
But if I could follow up, then suitable construction would also include like infrastructure like fire hydrants and lighting and so forth, would it not?
No,
Or is that,
not necessarily. Certainly, if there was a definitive plan before you, the regulations would require all of that. But what the A&R process, which is not favored by all planning agencies, but it's the law of the Commonwealth, it basically says that if there's a road that, in the opinion of the planning board, is sufficient for the traffic that it will serve, you can grant A&R endorsement. And in this particular case, there's 8 lots on a gravel road that is, a paved road goes to it. And so the question really before the board is the paved road that's shown on the plan that's the gravel road that's shown on the plan in existence suitable and adequate for the 8 lots that it's going to serve.
Pat?
I would like to remind the planning board that we had a tutorial from the Citizen Planner Training Collaborative, and we had 2 of the slides had to do with A&Rs. One of them specifically said, a way in existence when the subdivision control law took effect in the town and is, in the opinion of the planning board, suitable for proposed use of lots. Now, I went out there, I walked it, and I took a little stick, and I dug down a little bit. Oh, it was about that far to the original grade where I dug down. And there were parts, and I filled it in and tamped it down. And then, then I walked a little further, and the original grade was showing through, which meant that even the coating that had been put on was not sufficient to cover the original grade. And I strongly question, over a period of time, how long that surface would hold up, and I suggest that it would not hold up for the use of the 2 lots, and the vehicular traffic that does go over there on occasion too. So at this point, and I would like to move that we do not endorse this approval not required plan. There would need to be a second.
I'll second that
For discussion?
for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
I just have one question before we vote on that. Mr. Wall, you mentioned in your memo here, and you highlighted, at the time the division is proposed.
Right.
What is that time?
That's right now.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's
right
not
now.
some previous time.
No, the issue, the way the law reads, and just so you know, too, that what I got from the memo that you have before you, it's a quote of the law, and it's a quote right out of this, it's called the Handbook of Massachusetts, a Land Use and Planning Law, which is kind of the Bible that we land use lawyers and the courts follow. And what the law says is that the road at issue has to have been in existence prior to the town adopting subdivision control. But the determination as to the suitability of the way is at the time of the proposed division of land before you.
And my question is, you're not referring to some previous work on this project you're talking about now, at the time?
Right now, and that's why when you look at the plan, it shows the current width as recently improved and the surface materials. And if you have any technical questions regarding that work, once again, Mr. Borselli from Falmouth Engineering is here and could address the technical matters.
Thank you.
Ralph?
Right. Am I the only one who hasn't been out to the site to look at the improved road? Because I was out of town beginning last Friday and didn't get back until late last night. Am I the only one that has not been out to see this road as it is improved?
I have not been out there.
You have not been out.
I have not been
I
out
have
there.
not
I was
been
in
out.
Boston.
I've been there.
I've been there.
So
I was out there.
four of you, so you looked at the agenda, saw that it probably needed a site visit and went on your own.
Yes.
Well, Pat has reservations about the surface that's on the improved portion of the cartway. So, not having had a chance to observe it myself, I will vote in favor of her motion.
Through the chair, if I may.
Any further? I'm not looking for you, Brian, I'm just taking any board members. We have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Oh, I'm raising my
Your
hand.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, are there any comments from the staff?
No, sir.
Through the chair, may I make one more comment that's relevant to the comment that was just made?
Okay.
So the question you asked was whether there's any further review, and the answer is from the planning board, no. But when applications for building permits are submitted for these lots, which they presumably will, the building commissioner is entitled to also determine whether adequate access exists. And so if the road were to fall into a state of disrepair, building permits would not be able to be issued. So there is a further regulatory control in place.
You all set? The only thing that's missing from this paper you gave us, you did mention what's it's in the opinion of the planning board.
It is in the opinion.
That was not printed here, but you did say it. I just was left out from the printing thing, and I think that's, I went out, I'm ready to, anyone else have anything further to say? We have a motion and a second. All set to vote? All in favor? Aye.
Can we clarify
Yes,
we're
sir.
in favor of the motion, not the approval?
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Motion
It's
not
to approve is the
Thank
vote.
you. Okay, thank you.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you. I do appreciate you letting me be heard tonight.
Are we geared up to read this decision here?
Sure.
Next on the agenda,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you have another A&R plan that came in yesterday on the table?
okay, I just didn't see it on mine.
not.
Right, okay,
So, let's point that out.
all right. Almost missed it.
This is the one, excuse me, this is the one that just came in?
Guess so. I hadn't seen it as of yesterday.
Your agenda says plans received between April 27th and 10th.
Right,
It came in on the 9th.
Correct.
no,
So because you
It's
only have 21
appropriate.
days.
I should have checked back, it's my fault.
Can't come till Tuesday.
We've seen it before.
Thomas S. Crane, Woods Hole, Mass, Homes and Craft. The applicant Charles M.
Yeah,
Charles-
Charles M. and Thomas S.
Charles M. and Thomas S. Crane, Woods Hole Road, Woods Hole, Mass, Holmes and McGrath. Wow.
It's actually relatively simple. You'll see it on
It
the
looks
green
maybe
highlight.
simple to you, Brian.
Well, this is the one we already saw. and-
Yeah, I remember doing this before,
Yeah.
but
If the board's not comfortable.
I need time. I
and
can't-
would rather, we'll put it on your next agenda, which
Yeah.
is the 24th.
Yeah, this is a very complicated issue, and the area, and I remember going out there doing a site visit, walking it, and I can't remember it all, and I have to take, I need more time myself.
That's fine. Just so for your knowledge, the one change on the plan is highlighted in green. You'll see the distance and
So
bearing.
it's just that line?
That is the difference, but that's my interpretation. If you're more comfortable.
Okay,
having the
wait a second. I
land
may
surveyor
take that
point
back.
to that, that's fine too.
That dotted line, that little sliver triangle is the only thing where,
That's the only thing different than what we discussed last time.
Correct.
Oh.
But again, you're within your rights to.
I didn't mean to do that
That's
all over
okay.
again. I just couldn't, I just couldn't understand all these arrows. If that's the only change.
You'll
that
see
one-
that they required some additional upland area for that lot. So they moved the
Oh,
lot line
okay.
to the south about a second or two.
So they're just grabbing upland to comply to another board's requirements.
So it's not a subdivision by definition because they're simply changing an internal lot line. It's up to the board. You have time, if you're more comfortable having Mr.
I don't
McGrath
have a
there. He
problem
can't be
now.
here tonight.
No, I don't have a problem now. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was a
fine.
little triangle. Anybody else?
Yeah. I think we spent a lot of time discussing this previously, some months ago.
Yeah.
And we spent an awful lot of time discussing it, and there were a lot of questions I think that were addressed, so I'm comfortable with moving
Yeah, I am
forward
too.
tonight.
Well,
I move endorsement of this A and R. What is it, what's it entitled, what's it?
It's not on here.
No, it's not on there. I need-
Charles
I need
Crane
to
and
look at
Thomas
this.
Crane, Woods Hole.
Charles M. and Thomas S. Crane, approval not required. I move endorsement of the
Second.
plan.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Sorry for that,
No, it's
misstep
okay.
there. I was confused by the detail on the drawings.
There's a lot of surplusage on the plan. I'll speak to the designer.
Okay. Here we go. So this is planning board decision, Irene Rodriguez preliminary plan. This is still a preliminary decision, right? Yeah.
That, oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, so this is back again. Of 28.8 acres of land to be subdivided into 7 lots with 24 multifamily dwellings units located at Lot 0 and 375 Sandwich Roads. Holmes and McGrath for the applicant. I was going to have Bob do it, but he's all queued up.
Okay. April 26, 2016, draft map number 2706011000 plus 2706 plus 31000. Motion that the planning board vote the following findings and recommendations to address the issues raised under the subdivision regulations of the town of Falmouth. Article 3, preliminary plans for a plan entitled Preliminary Subdivision Plan prepared for Rodriguez Realty Trust in East Falmouth, Mass., prepared by Holmes and McGrath, Inc., dated February 23rd, 2016, revised April 21st, 2016, scale 1 inch equals 80 feet. Findings. The application for a preliminary subdivision plan consists of 2.8 acres of land to be subdivided into 7 lots. The applicant has
Excuse
proposed...
me, 28.8,
28.8, what did I say?
2.8.
Oh, jeez. Big difference.
Stickler for details, Paul.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No,
yeah.
no, he's right.
You know, you gotta check up on you guys
Yeah.
all the time.
I'll read that again. The application for a preliminary subdivision plan consists of 28.8 acres of land to be subdivided into 7 lots. The applicant has proposed a planned residential development, PRD, showing 6 lots. The 7th lot with an existing residence will be part of the definitive plan application, but will not be a part of the PRD. A 24-lot grid subdivision plan was also provided to prove the density that would be allowed as a matter of right. However, the applicant is proposing 24 units contained in 6 buildings, 1 building per lot. The PRD also shows 19.56 acres of open space. The planning board held public meetings on this application on April 12, 2016 and April 26, 2016, where the applicant and members of the public were allowed to address the board and offer their comments, concerns, and ideas. The board thanks everyone for their participation. The revised plan dated April 21st, 2016 has taken into account the recommendations of the planning board, including sidewalks, open space, including an enhanced buffer of 50 feet along the south and northerly boundary lines, lot with circles for PRD lots, 300-foot center line offset with adjacent roads, turning radius at curb cut, and emergency access. The board finds the revised PRD concept to be superior over the standard grid subdivision. Recommendations. 1, a list of waivers from the planning board's rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land must be included as part of the definitive plan application. 2, the applicant should expect the planning board to require the installation of septic systems with enhanced nitrogen removal unless the applicant demonstrates the associated recharge does not reach the Great Pond high-quality area. Approval of subsurface sewage disposal systems will be subject to Board of Health approval and permitting. 3, town water is available on Sandwich Road. Design and approval of the proposed water main and services will be subject to the Water Department. Hydrant location subject to approval by the Falmouth Fire Rescue Department. The applicant should coordinate with the electrical company regarding the proposed roadway crossing their easement. More detail in the definitive plan will be required regarding access across the proposed roadway, as well as restrictions of traffic through the easement. 5, the definitive plan application must include the required drainage calculations for the roadway. 6, the cross-section in the roadway plan and profile must include a sidewalk detail. 7, the preliminary plan is certified by a registered surveyor at a total of 28.8 acres below the Cape Cod Commission's development of regional impact review threshold of 30 acres. The board is aware that deeds to the property indicate a total of 35 acres. Therefore, a certified perimeter survey must accompany the definitive plan application.
Second.
So before we vote, can I just say, I live in the next neighborhood over. I've called Mr. Duffy during last week to ask give an opinion of whether or not I should be recusing myself, but he's been busy. I don't know if he's had a chance to give it any consideration. I haven't heard anything, so not hearing anything probably means it's okay. It's only
Not in a
preliminary.
butter, right.
I'm not in a butter, I'm not on the map, I'm in the next neighborhood over. I don't think there's anything that's a problem, but I just wanted to
Just
disclose
to-
that here and now, just before we vote.
Is that in Canterbury or?
No, over off of Green Acre Road, it's the next one to the north.
Hold on. Any other board members? Yes?
In recommendations, number 4, it says coordinate with the electrical company. Since the drawings refer to the Commonwealth Electric Company by name, I think we should refer to the correct name.
Well, that's actually not the correct
Well,
name
that's not the
anymore.
correct name.
Well, whatever it is, if it's on a drawing, it should be
Yeah.
referred to
Maybe it should just say
Electric.
utility holding the easement.
whoever it is. Maybe it should be defined properly then.
It's a preliminary plan, we'll have a chance to correct that on the next drawing.
And if we correct it to National Grid, it'll probably be wrong by the time we get back to it, because they're always changing.
Could be outsourced, but we'll have the applicant corrected on the final
And
plan.
all the other conditions, we're specifically naming a department or something to go forward. I think we should name
The electric
whoever
utility,
holds the easement.
probably should call it the electric utility easement holder.
That's fine.
So good. Okay, so the applicant should coordinate with the, I didn't hear the change.
The
Why don't you
utility
say it
easement, whoever owns the utility easement,
They don't own the easement, the land is
the
owned.
the right to use the easement.
Okay, so the applicant should coordinate with the proper utility company
Right.
whose easement encumbers the property.
Right.
Okay.
Is that a motion, Paul?
Well, right,
Yes.
okay.
I'll
You can
second.
vote. All right.
I second the
Preliminary
motion.
Motion and a second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Very good. Any more comments from the board? We've had a lot of public, you have more, Doug?
I have one more question. I never really did understand exclusion of the original lot on the street, and I make a motion that that be included in this.
They did explain it before, there is a reason.
I know, but I didn't get it. It doesn't make sense to me, and It's the
It's a
access for this.
subdivision control law. We would like to have the applicant explain it again? Or they
Yeah.
can do it the next time, whichever you prefer.
Right,
This
or
is
maybe-
preliminary plan.
Okay, just to make a note of it, that personally, I don't agree with excluding that when that's the access to the development. It's just, if I can be, if I
Note
can be
that.
explained again, I'll get it as just my input.
So, the purpose of the preliminary plan is to make sure you alert the applicant that you might have some concerns.
Questions?
So Doug has a concern that all the land, and I think 7 addresses it, because you see it says, the perimeter survey must accompany the definitive plan application. That's the important application, because that will give you, remember, the special permit is just to cluster the lot.
Right.
But the definitive plan application will give you the perimeter survey you need for all the land that's in the subdivision, under the subdivision control law. The concern is that they might exclude something?
Correct.
Okay.
If this is excluded from the perimeter survey, then of course it won't be included.
Okay, so you want to make sure that any residual land from the definitive plan is shown or accompanies the application.
I would think that's probably the correct wording.
Okay, so on 7, Doug, you might just want to say another sentence after definitive plan application. Another sentence, plus any residual land as a result of the definitive plan also accompany the application. Getting all this? Okay? So if they do carve something out and bring something to you, they show it as a perimeter survey. You also want to see any, fugitive land or any residual land as a result of that division. Everybody understand? Get it? See what Doug's saying? Or what I'm saying?
It's going to be part of the definitive plan anyways.
So do I make a motion that we include that language?
Second.
You have, and it's
Okay.
seconded.
Very good.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any further?
Main motion then, all right?
Do we have public comment on this?
No.
We have people here, is there any new public comment? Does anyone have anything new that they didn't speak up the last time? Keep in mind, it's a preliminary plan. Every abutter's going to be notified. We're starting this all over again in a little while. So if there's anything new, we'll just, okay?
We need to vote on the main motion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been moved and seconded.
Okay, all set. All in favor on the main motion?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, preliminary plan's done. Thank you. I have to recuse myself. I am working with the applicant on the sale of the property. I'm a commercial real estate broker.
Okay, so next on our agenda is public discussion. The applicant, Retail Site Processing, Inc., care of Eli Jamal, site plan review to raise and reconstruct existing building to bank/drive-through commercial facility located at 815 Main Street, and Falmouth Engineering, Inc. is the firm. For the yes, Paul. Public notices, thank you.
9 abutters were notified by regular mail of this public discussion, and also a public meeting notice was published on April 29, 2016.
For the applicant.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For the record, my name is Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. Mr. Yamal is in the audience tonight in the front row. He's also joined by his architect, who I just met this evening, Bill Fonaciar. We have some,
Mike, could you spell that for our recording secretary,
you
please?
didn't get that? Bill, B-I-L-L.
That's good. Very good.
Thank you.
This is new to me, too. I'm kind of happy you're doing it, but I'm going to be rusty a little. Well, not rusty, I'm just going to be green at it, so bear with me.
Oh, yeah.
So the application is for a property at 807 and 815 Main Street. It's the burned-out building directly next door to the right of Mary Ellen's and Dairy Queen, and if you're looking at it from the street to the left of the Cumberland Farms. The site is right here, the Dairy Queen is here, and the Cumberland Farms property is here. This is Main Street, Scranton Ave, merging in with Falmouth Heights Road, Friendly's, and one of my favorite places over here, Slice of Italy. This is the existing conditions survey that we did with some elements highlighted. The existing building is shown here. The entire property, not the entire property, but a very large portion of the property is paved. I've shown unpaved areas as a light green. They're not really green, but it's earth and unpaved area. There's some concrete slabs and concrete sidewalks on the edges. Directly next door is actually a road called Cycle Avenue. It's really not probably, you may not even know it was a road. It's really in effect a pavement and driveway circulating behind Cumberland Farms. This is the building in its this was taken in early April. This is the front of the building. You can see the remnants of the fire. This is the side facing Dairy Queen. You can see off in the background end of Cumberland Farms building in that Cycle Avenue, as it's called here. And Main Street would be off the page this direction. This is the back of the building. It's sort of obviously in a state of disrepair, and not a lot happening here to improve conditions or maintain them. This is the back. Off in the distance is parking for Cumberland Farms. I'm standing with my back towards Mary Ellen's taking that picture. This is the side facing Cumberland Farms. Mary Ellen's off in the background here. Gus Canty Recreation over there, Main Street. And this is the proposed plan. The proposal is for a bank with drive-through canopy. The building is shown here, and it has just over 2,700 square feet of actual building, and there's a canopy allowing for a double lane drive-through. So there'd be an actual window at the building, and then a vacuum access, second lane that you can still do transactions via the vacuum tube. I think you're all familiar with. We're proposing evergreen planting on both sides to screen, and we're proposing additional landscaping in the back. I have a plant list in a preliminary landscape plan that unfortunately we weren't able to put up on the board, on the screen I should say, but I can hand it in if you'd like. I'll just summarize. The trees are proposed to be dogwood, golden rain tree, eastern red cedar. There's a mix of shrubs, inkberry holly, hydrangea, and some bayberry, and then there'll also be some grass and perennial beds surrounding the edges of the property. So it's clearly an overall vast improvement over the current conditions. As I said, this is preliminary, but I'd like to submit it just so you have it for file. It shows the locations of these plants in the plant list, if you'd like. So the concept is that there'll be 2 driveway entrances, and there would be circulation that allows for two-way traffic at this driveway entrance that would allow vehicles to come in and park alongside the building, or if these are full, they would park to the rear. If you weren't doing business in the building, you would continue around into a double-lane queue for drive-through transactions. This has been designed to meet the standards for stacking for this type of drive-through. It's 3 per lane, so there's 6 required for stacking, and this lane, in my opinion, meets those requirements. There's actually more stacking, but if you were to stack back here, there'd be an interference with these parking spaces. But I would like to point out, under your table of parking requirements at 240-109 for this use, the required number of spaces, if you assume this to be business professional, is 1 space per 250 square feet, which is a requirement for 11 parking spaces. We're actually providing 15 spaces. So the idea was that these most remote spaces would be for employees, and the more convenient spaces along the building would be for patrons for the bank, and perhaps some over here, depending on the activity at the bank. So the parking requirements are met, either exceeded. So any conflicts with these spaces would be employee parking conflicts, so we're not really concerned about that. This is in a business redevelopment zoning district, and the business redevelopment zoning district is encouraging this mixed use, and there's specific density requirements and setback requirements for this district. First of all, maximum lot coverage by structures. In this district, the maximum lot coverage by structures allowed is 20%, and that would include the building and the canopy as defining the structure. Our overall proposed lot coverage by structures is 14.8%. It's close to and slightly more than the existing lot coverage by structure, which is 13.6%. In addition to structure lot coverage, there's an overall lot coverage, which is structures, paving, and parking. The overall lot coverage proposed is specifically designed to meet the standard just slightly under 60%, which is the maximum allowed, to 59.9%. And that is driven by the parking requirements and, of course, the need to have a drive-through lane. This meets your lot coverage maximum allowed, and it's actually less than on the existing site condition, because the existing site condition had significantly, but some additional pavement over and above what this proposal is. So when all is said and done, if this plan advances, there'd be a reduction in overall lot coverage, and it would conform to the business redevelopment requirements. In a business redevelopment, you're allowed a 20-foot setback from Main Street, and we're providing 21 feet in excess. Side and rear is 10 feet, and we're conforming to those setbacks. Site drainage has been designed in accordance with the standards of the town, that we look to the subdivision regulations for the design storm, and we design either subsurface recharge or grass-lined swale areas for the surface runoff. The current site has no drainage control whatsoever. This site has been redesigned, and the grading has been designed such that there is a high point at the entrance here and here, so that water pitches from the road, sidewalk area into the site, not onto the road, at both lanes. And this grading is such that it's level across the edge of the building, but it pitches away from the building and then down the pavement to a low point at the back. In a swale, there would be a grass-lined depression, and by that I mean a couple of feet, not very deep, just a grass depression, very subtle, with a drain at the bottom for storms that might have a high intensity at the beginning. It would fill the swale, go into the drain, and then subside. But the majority of storms would be contained and filtered through the grass area. There is one small area out here where we're collecting it into a standard catch basin and then piping it to a subsurface leaching pit. There just simply isn't enough room to create a grass swale for this smaller area. That was all designed in accordance with town standards. The sewer is available, so there's no on-site septic. I submitted a detail on site lighting. It would be typical, and we're showing the lighting. There'd be lighting on the building, and there'd be some lighting at the corners of the parking lot where needed. We did submit a catalog cut, and we can provide more information if needed. There are 2 handicap spots, van accessible, with a ramp at the close proximity to the entrance. And the parking is designed to have concrete curb stops so that cars don't pull up, right up into, so the bumpers are onto the sidewalk and interfere with pedestrian traffic walking along the side of the building. There are some preliminary architectural elevations of the building. The upper one would be the right, or the one that you would, with the entrance, that this faces Cumberland Farms. The left one faces the Dairy Queen Mary Ellen site. We have the front, which faces Main Street, and the canopy for the drive-through supported by a post. And then we have the rear elevation. There was...
Mike, just a moment. Bob has a question
Yeah,
for you.
I'm trying to remember, along the street, is there curb, or is that just one big driveway apron going into the property?
It's all paved.
Yeah, I know it's all paved, but I'm just wondering, is there curb, I guess what I'm asking is there a curb cut existing, or is it the whole front one big curb cut?
This island exists from here over. It's all pavement to Cumberland Farms. And here it's...
So that island exists then?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, it's not much of an island, but it's not paved, so I can say it that
Yeah,
way. And there's a
okay.
sidewalk that runs along here. So you see this right here, there's some curbing that's like in front of that.
Okay.
But from here over is it's wider than would be recommended for an overlay. The same with this.
That was what I was getting to, is whether you're gonna have to improve the sidewalk.
Yes, what we're going to do, and it was in this engineering report, we're gonna provide the turning radiuses that are more controlled, and we're gonna improve the landscape out front in that area, but the sidewalk will be maintained, and handicap access will be maintained across the entire existing sidewalk. All we're going to do is narrow down and have more control of the entrances. You'll see a rounding here, but this is deceiving because there's no structure here. This will be at grade, and that was a comment in the engineering report that I'm working out with him. There were some matters in the engineering report, all very much easily overcome. I just need to work out some details with him.
Okay.
And Paul, before we go further, you had a question in this?
I do.
Okay,
I may.
before Mike goes further, we get off of this.
Mhm.
I
Thank
had a
you.
couple of questions, if I may. Traffic.
Yes.
It looks like there's one-way traffic on the east side and two-way traffic on the west side,
Correct.
and you have a canopy going over it. Would an emergency vehicle be able to go through on the west side and come out the east side with that low canopy?
No.
'Cause there's no way for an emergency vehicle to turn around back here and get back out on the west side.
Right, if there was a response for emergency vehicles, depending on the vehicle, a fire truck, for instance, that is higher than the canopy, they would respond and they would stage either on Main Street or they would stage here or here. And they would not be able to go underneath the canopy. They would have to, back out of the site.
But it's narrowed down to two locations.
It's narrowed down to two locations, meaning the entrances?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is 24 foot wide, so it's very much adequate for emergency vehicles. This is 20 feet wide, so they could stage right here too, if they needed to, for firefighting. And of course, we have all of this pavement over here at the Cumberland Farms, and there's a parking lot right here at the Dairy Queen. So there is no way to get completely around with a fire truck.
Right. The other question is, I noticed there's a landscape area showing a wall through most of the west side and just a small portion of the east side.
Yes.
What is that? Is that just a feature? Is that a high wall, or what is
If
that
you,
intended
if
to
you've
be?
been to the site and look at it from Main Street, it pitches across from this side being the high side, across to this side being the low side. So right now, the whole site is sort of at an angle. It doesn't work well for a parking lot or drive. So what we've done with the design and the regrading is we've sort of taken a slightly slanted site and we're going to level it off. So on one side, you're going to have a very low profile, 2 to 3 foot high cut, where you'll have a landscape wall. That would be on the Cumberland's farm side, and on this side, we're going to adjust it slightly, so there'll be a very low profile, 2 foot landscape wall here that would be a fill, and it would be 2 foot high. So the net result is the site becomes level for the obvious reasons of parking and driving. Those walls are landscape walls. There'd be landscaping in and around them. They'll be aesthetically pleasing, and they won't be of such a height that there's any issues with safety. They pretty much just ease the grade, if you will, on the site.
So it's not to prevent people from walking from Dairy Queen over to the
Absolutely not.
Cumberland Farms area?
No.
Last comment, it's about time, it's a bad site.
Thank you.
Mike, thanks for letting me interrupt you to get these couple
That's
of
okay.
questions.
That's fine. I think I was pretty much summarizing and finishing up, other than I wanted to touch base again on the engineering department's comments. I've worked with Scott Schluter for years now, and I didn't get it in time to give you revised plans, but I see nothing in here I can't sort out with him. I think it's all very reasonable. So we were hopeful we could finish this up tonight, because time is very of the essence because of a pending real estate transaction. I'm very confident that I can work these out with Scott, and I would hope that you might allow me to do that and condition your approval on me working out the details and giving you a revised plan. Just because because of our time sensitivity. In fact, Mr. Yamal may want to speak to that. He'd like to say a few words.
That can't have anything to do with our decision.
I understand. I'm just asking, for some courtesy if it's available, possible to do that. I'm here to answer questions, but I think Mr. Yamal would like to speak. And I think Bill is obviously here to answer questions too.
Can I ask
That-
one more before you go? I see you've got the drainage for the parking lot. What would be the plan to capture the runoff from the roof?
Good point. The engineering report actually asked the same question. We're going to put that in dry wells. Instead of having leaders down onto the pavement and then just draining onto the pavement, that can cause an icing issue. We're going to put them right into the ground. This is a slab. In fact, you reminded me of one other thing, if I could. There will be dry wells for the roof runoff. This is a slab. It's important to note, you can see this blue line. Because of the elevation here, there's actually a flood zone that swoops up in here. From the very head of the harbor, it swoops up behind Dairy Queen, Paul's Pizza area, and it's all low-lying. So that this is like a foot into the flood zone. But the building's been designed to meet FEMA standards. It's a slab, and the regrading of the site is actually going to result in the site being slightly above the flood zone. So this flood zone that comes in here simply because it's about a foot lower than the 100-year storm event will be adjusted so that it will no longer be below the flood zone. It will be slightly above.
So that would be also something that would follow up with Mr. Schluter?
Yes. It's very common, dry wells, I mean.
Right. I just thought I would see. Okay.
Right. Mr. Barcelli, you got a staff site report here that's looking really good. There were only 3 open items. The traffic circulation, I think you already showed the stacking spaces. I don't know whether you said there were 3, but it may not be delineated as the 3, but you have shown there are six
Three per
stacking.
lane, yes.
Right, okay. And then landscaping plan, you gave us a copy of that, so that's done.
And a list of material.
Right. So that's, so then the only other open item was the flood zone, and you just now alluded to that. Has that been, Brian, would you say that is no longer an issue, the flood zone, having, with his explanation just now?
Well, I've heard an explanation. Thank you, Mike. I haven't had time to consult with the
Okay, so that's just the
staff.
only open item left, okay. Thank you very much.
If I could just follow up, if I could, Madam Chairman, on the flood zone, realize the building department's going to review this for FEMA compliance for
Yeah.
the building permit. So we were anticipating that, didn't propose a basement.
Got it.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
No more questions. One comment.
Okay.
The plans looked really nice. It's a big improvement to that site.
Would you like to see the plans in color, the elevation?
Oh, if you
Like
have
that,
them,
yeah.
love to, thank you. Oh, come on, you gotta go up there.
Here you go.
Oh, thank you.
I wasn't gonna let him walk
You might want to move it.
Move it over that way because the projectors. Thank you, that's great.
There you go.
So again, Bill Fornashire from BF Architects in Plymouth. So that's the colored version of it. Classic white painted beadboard, gray painted clapboard, and dark asphalt shingle on the roof.
It's going on.
Big improvement over the square box that's there now.
Oh, yeah.
I like the fact it's up close to the street. Traffic is in the back, parking is out, not in the front. A lot of things I like about it.
Certainly an improvement.
Yes,
So
sir.
we don't have a motion, Brian, so how could we proceed by expediting this? Is there any way?
I think we'll see you the 24th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
there's-
24th? Is that our
Say
next
the
meeting?
10th. The election is next week, see you the 24th.
Okay, thank you.
So the 24th. Because I think with my point of view is with the extensive engineering comments that have not had time because they just came in
Yeah.
to be incorporated into the site plan, I hesitate to give a blanket and say, okay, work it out with staff.
We're close.
Yeah, we're really, really, really close on this. But there's an extensive list.
The board has never done it before.
And I was just going to say that, yeah. I don't ever recall, and
You never recall,
I'm getting ancient on this
One-
board.
and one night, you mean it's not appropriate to take that, make it a condition of approval?
I've never seen that, Mike, and I've been on the board now 15 years.
The board's
so.
procedures, you would have to waive your policy for voting that night.
Mhm.
And it has to be a unanimous vote. And then you have to vote on the application. The board typically does it for, the applications are fairly simple and ministerial and routine in nature. I've never seen the board simply grant a blanket decision and leave it up to the staff. They sometimes do it that way, but this board has never done that. I don't suggest you do it here.
Could I just ask, I understand that, can we anticipate a vote on the 24th if everything is addressed?
I think so, don't you?
Everything is
If
adjusted.
everything is addressed. Okay, so that means you have to make
Sure.
sure that everything is
Yes,
addressed.
understood.
And there were no concerns really raised here tonight. You answered questions that people had, that
Mhm.
probably some of them would have been addressed
Mhm.
if it had been incorporated in here.
Mhm.
And I think you can get the sense, which I was getting, I can't speak for every member of the board, that they find this plan rather pleasing.
Thank you.
Yes, Bob?
Just one other question. I see that design review is not an open item. Have you gone before the design review committee? And what was
That's
the...
us,
That's us.
I think it's you now,
Okay, well, that's what I,
so I guess I have.
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
It's now.
yeah, and this is what we were essentially
Which is-
commenting on,
Yeah.
but you wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
people
I-
understood this.
that-
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
yeah.
The
Which
other
I think is
design review
great, a
committee
very
wasn't.
efficient way of handling it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And essentially, design review is also looking at the landscaping, what the building's gonna look like. So it makes, yeah, well, we didn't have signage
No, we didn't
indicated
have.
on here, and that probably would be another thing that should be put
You
on.
want to speak to the signage?
Surely,
So the board,
of course.
the board doesn't,
We don't
the
do
board,
the
the
sign.
board doesn't look at the sign.
No, we don't, but we look to
And
see
that's
where
what I
it's
was getting
placed, I
at.
think.
Oh, for placement, yeah.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ali Jamal, and we on purpose left the signs out because the tenant is going to be Eastern Bank. And Eastern Bank does not have a design in hand as of yet, and they fully understand that it's subject to zoning or planning board or whatever board it might be that they have to visit to get an approval. So we will not be looking for a sign permit. It's the tenant who will come in and look for a sign approval. Eastern Bank, as you probably know, have 2 branches in Falmouth. They're going to shut them both down and move to this location. So you're not going to have 5 banks, you're going to have 1 bank plus. The unfortunate thing, and I fully understand that what I'm going to tell you shouldn't and wouldn't make you change your mind about anything, but we are dealing with an extremely difficult seller. It took me 6 months to have him say, yeah, I'll have a cup of coffee with you and talk about the purchase. And now, after we sign an agreement, he's calling every day, when they go to planning board, when they go to planning board. So if it's at all possible that, provided we address all the issues on the 24th, that we could have a vote, will help us greatly. He is, I don't know if the town knows him, I'm sure. He's a nice guy, but he's very difficult when it comes to business. And so we are, we just hanging day by day, trying to please him. And at some point, things will not work for us, only because he keeps on asking for option money and this and that. And so if 24th, and we provide you with everything you need, we'll really appreciate it, vote.
This is why I took pains to say, the indication I got from all the board members is that they like what they're seeing.
Right.
And it's, of course, based upon Mike working out with engineering and with our staff to
And we
make sure
picked
that.
up Cape Cod design on purpose. I have a house on East Sandwich, and we like Cape Cod, that's why we bought our house. And the plants, all native plants. So we try purely to stay with, Cape Cod / Falmouth style. That's why we have the roof and the peaks and all that, and we're excited about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we will have this back on our agenda then on the 24th.
If all goes well.
I know,
It'll be on the 24th. We'll have it up on the agenda.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Will you be here?
How'd I do on my
Powerful.
Good.
You're getting better.
Be here.
Stick to your day job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Servant seat.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay. Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
The next couple items are discussion items. And everybody says, welcome to Charter.
Oh,
Sorry. The first one is a conservancy bylaw, and this is something that has come up a couple of times in our local comprehensive plan, and how we as a town are going to have to deal with the challenges of sea level rise and floodplain, and Bob's come up with something that Chatham has done, and we wanted to just bring it through for discussion.
Yeah, what prompted this was the disregard for the local comprehensive plan by town meeting voting to put an affordable housing unit at the head of Little Pond. And I went into our zone book and went to Article, was it Roman numerals 18, proposed floodplain zone. It says, "The town of Falmouth, recognizing the dangers inherent upon coastal flooding at times of hurricane or severe storms and as a means of protecting its citizens and their property, hereby establishes a series of floodplain overlay districts and regulations for the construction of structures for the use of land in these districts." And I guess the town doesn't seem to have the common sense to look at this and say, we need to be protecting our citizens and our property. So because they can't seem to take a hint, I think we need to have an additional bylaw that really hammers it home that we should not be building in these areas. And Chatham has taken that step. And you all received a copy of the Chatham Conservancy bylaw, which prohibits a lot of things that go on in these areas. And I'm not saying that we should make it such that Chatham doesn't allow even private development in these areas. I think people who want to build in these areas, it's their money, their property. You really can't stop them. I don't want to step on anybody's property rights. That's up to them. But as a town, I think we should be leading the way, and leading the way away from coastal flooding and hazard zones. And I would like to maybe rework this article in our current zoning code book so that we can incorporate some of the things that are in the Chatham bylaw. So that's why I keep asking for it to be on the agenda, and I think that's something that we should start working on the way we've worked on other bylaws, where we've started out with something, we've looked at others, and maybe meshed a couple things together to make our own that would work for the town of Falmouth. So that's my introduction for that. I'd like to hear what other members have to say.
I think we need to do this, Bob. When we met with the Conservation Commission too, we tagged certain areas that should be used for the estuaries, for floodplain protection. And a good example is the Falmouth Mall. It's built on fill, and it used to be floodplain in there that if we had a huge surge, would accommodate it. And so we've done away with that. The proposed, what's it called now, whatever, is going to require quite a lot of fill to have that put in there, and supposedly they're going to have to excavate to equal the amount of fill, and land that the fill is taken in. Well, that may be impossible, it may prove to be impossible. So we'd be taking away more floodplain protection. There were other areas that were pointed out by the Conservation Commission when we met with them about the resiliency, our little committee of 3. And there was one, oh my goodness, Woods Hole is a huge concern, where it's constantly flooding in there. So there were a number of places that the Conservation Commission were concerned about. And so my question would be, should we be working this out jointly with the Conservation Commission? Does the input first come from us as to what we think, and then give them what we're using as background and ask for their input? I'm throwing this out for discussion.
I think the dialogue, just bringing it up and having the public comment and going through it would be a good, see what the town thinks, just going through the process. After all, we just propose things and the town meeting votes them, so I think it should be a good process for us to probably do it jointly with the Conservation Commission and see what we can come up with, or find something workable, and bring it for public discussion, and then take it on to town meeting and see what happens. But I think that would be all good work.
We're not breaking new ground here. I mean, this is talk all up and down the coast, wherever flooding and sea level rise is an issue. And from the presentation we had from the Woods Hole group last week, the week before, the FEMA maps look very conservative compared to what the other studies are showing. And I would think a town that is the home to some of the most prestigious oceanographic institutions and scientific institutions should be leading the way with this. We should not be continuing to act like it's 1966, where we build in wetlands and swamps. We should be more proactive about this. And we've, like Pat said, we talked about other areas where we need to think about flood mitigation. What is going to reduce the impacts? We all know that the recent thing from the Cape Cod Commission that we received, the envisioning study or group that we had, and they were talking about extending the end of Little Pond up, was it the Little Pond stream that goes up to the back of the T-Ticket School? That we talked about that as extending that, and we on our committee also talked about redevelopment. The mall probably won't always be in the same location. Those buildings will fail, they'll get torn down, they'll get relocated. We are thinking 30 to 50 to 100 years out, and that's the hat you have to put on when we're talking about these things, because sea level rise, even just since Hurricane Bob, and this bylaw, they talk about the maps from 1992, and if you drive along Surf Drive Beach now, those houses that were raised after Hurricane Bob no longer meet the requirements from the new maps. So those people who were proactive then are still in the same boat that they were after Hurricane Bob now. So we need to do something, and I think the town should take the lead and create this bylaw that would just restrict the town from doing things, not necessarily the private sector, because they're going to do what they want to do.
Do we know how long Chatham's had it in place?
It was long enough to be challenged in court, and they found, I don't know what year, it was a couple.
But we could find that out as
Yeah,
part of the process.
Yeah. So I don't know if everybody had a chance to read it.
Yeah. I read through the bylaw in Chatham. It's far-reaching, and it basically says you cannot build in the floodplain. I mean, it's pretty definitive on those issues. I think we have to be careful about adopting that for Falmouth. But having said that, the planning board, as you mentioned, looks at long-term development, long-term issues, and that's our responsibility. I think we have to look at that because things are changing and are going to get worse. The Conservation Commission looks at more shorter issues, what's going on now, and I think it would be very worthwhile to have a joint meeting with both groups and hash this out a bit, because there are some very serious repercussions from what we're trying to do here. I think it's important, and we can address them, but I think it requires a real good, hard effort by, at a minimum, both organizations, both groups, maybe others as well.
Brian, do we have a target date for a meeting with Conservation?
So we're meeting with their chair Thursday.
Thursday,
And
okay.
it's just a coordination meeting for setting agendas,
So this is timely, we'll be picking a date then. Yes, Ralph?
Yeah, Bob, I somehow have missed getting a copy of
I
that.
didn't get a copy either.
Did you email it to us?
No,
Or did the staff?
I got mine from
the office.
Melinda.
Okay, so the
It's
office,
supposed to go there and then back. I got it that way.
Yeah.
Check
I
your
got it.
email. It's been mailed to
I
everybody.
don't think I got it.
It might have got into
I would have remembered
the
it.
spam.
How long ago was that?
Week?
Oh, no, then I didn't get it. And Pat said she didn't get it either.
It's
Yeah, I
it's very
didn't see it.
comprehensive.
I didn't see it. I maybe didn't look closely enough.
I think what they did was they emailed you a link,
Yeah,
not the actual bylaw.
you gotta click on
You
it.
click on the link and the bylaw will pop up.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what was
It
mailed?
shows up as a PDF.
It's a hyperlink and inside it's a blue text inside an email that if you click on it, brings the
Yeah,
report
but
up.
what did the email say? Here's the Chatham
Yeah.
bylaw?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
We'll
send
resend
you out.
I'll look again.
Okay,
Yeah, I will too.
there should be a link. If you can't find it, let us know.
About a week ago, huh?
We'll get it to you. Okay?
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Nothing else?
Yep,
Okay, so that'll be upcoming.
thank you.
Next, we'll turn to another local comprehensive plan issue, the historic element. And we have a draft of that. Pat has it to read.
Yeah, well, not to read out loud. I hope everybody has read it before we got here, because,
Talk about it then.
yeah, we do want your input on it, because we want to bring this to our joint meeting with the selectmen, and hopefully they will approve it. And again, remember, they only approve the goal and the policies.
So-
I should have Googled the heritage approach, and I wonder if you could just briefly tell me where that comes from?
Actually, there was supposed to be a footnote. Sorry. Okay. Oh, there is a footnote, but it's not been added here.
Okay.
It's still a work in progress.
So,
Brian, you have a comment?
The heritage landscape approach came out of the report from Heritage Strategies out of Pennsylvania. It is on the webpage, their planning board's webpage.
Okay.
So you can read about the heritage landscape approach there.
okay.
I'm trying to save paper and huge emails that
Yeah.
clog up your inbox.
Okay.
Yeah, Jim.
Yes, Ralph?
Let's see, on number 3, under action items, you've got the Historic District Commission and the Historical Commission. Aren't we voting on the combining those two?
I think it's been done.
No,
Yeah.
I think it's this spring. I think it's on, I think
Next week.
it's next week's vote, isn't it?
Yeah.
Town meeting voted, and now there's a ballot question at the election.
Oh, the election
Right,
Tuesday.
so.
It's in the
We
election
changed the
Tuesday.
chart.
So I'm just nitpicking here, but I mean, if that's the case, if it gets voted,
We'll change it.
then there'd only be one of those, and it's gonna be called the Historical Commission,
Yeah.
I believe.
We had to include both of them until,
Right. And then also on number 8, I was happy to see that you involved the Community Preservation Committee, because the Community Preservation Committee will come up for a town vote in 2020, And obviously, this will go beyond that. So this is cannon fodder for the Community Preservation Committee to take to town meeting and say that, this is just one more reason why we should continue the Community Preservation Act in Falmouth.
We can't, Ralph, we cannot go into detail as to why all of these action items are in here. But what we wanted to do is, older homes fall into disrepair because people don't have the money to do it. That's why the revolving funds, to help
Right.
preserve.
Well, Paul can speak to it too, but, I mean, the Community Preservation Committee can make, if a fund was established like that, it could be replenished every couple of years if it was being, as long as, however the fund was, whoever was controlling the fund, as they dispersed monies to comply with this, it could be replenished by another application to the Community Preservation Committee.
Well, it wasn't even, that's one thing, but we also anticipated that some people, based on a sliding scale, would be able to repay that fund, too. It's depending upon how it's set up.
So it'd be a loan instead of a grant.
It depends upon how it's set up.
Right, it could
with
do
this
both.
action item.
You
What
could do
we're
both.
trying to recognize is a lot of people that own historic homes that really can't afford to take care of them.
I know that, and
They're very expensive undertaking,
I know,
especially
and-
roofing.
currently the Community Preservation Committee has in their policy that they will not fund
Right.
individual
Right.
projects.
Understood.
Homes and projects, so this could be a way to circumvent that.
Well, one of the tenets or philosophies that we had going into this is when you mention historic district to anybody, there's usually a groan because they feel like they're being told what they can do and what they can't do. And we wanted to make owning a piece of historic property something that people would want to do and
Yep.
to be less onerous and not have to worry about being nitpicked to death over little things.
Yep.
And make people, give some encouragement to people to
Yep.
maintain these properties and actually to be part of even a historic, it's not a historic district, it's a heritage district, they would call them. It's kind of a historic district light, because there are a lot of other places around town that have really nice old historic buildings, but aren't in any district.
Yep.
So we're trying to make people want to be historic and maintain the character of the town.
I have a question about this. Is there a set of best practice guidelines for historic districts? I see you've noted on number 9 to encourage best practice in historic preservation. So it's been my personal experience that it's really up to the makeup of the current Historic District Commission of what is acceptable and what isn't. Sometimes in the past, aluminum-clad windows would win a historic preservation award on Main Street, and then in subsequent years, they're not acceptable in a historic district. And then we have other ideas about the new home on Quistit Ave with the unusual roof lines being an example of modern construction that will later be historic. So that, to me, is, personally, in my opinion, not a best practice, but I wonder if there is such a set of guidelines that we should be looking at for guidance to our own Historic District Commission to say, you have the right to review things, but there should be a certain parameter to remain within, because you're really changing the character when you just completely, and not only changing the character, but you're changing the up and down with the whims of the people that are on the board, whereas in our case, we know what our rules are, and we try to operate within them. I'm not sure they have a set of rules exactly, because there's sometimes I feel like those decisions are rather arbitrary and based just on the personal opinions of the people on that. So I wonder if there's such a way to create these guidelines.
The HDC does have a nice thick little guideline as to what they look at. And that was, I don't know, how old is that, Brian? It's fairly recent.
About 5.
Yeah, okay, so it's probably not well-known, but when something comes before them, they now have guidelines, which they didn't have. There's also a document that's about yay thick that I do not remember what it's called anymore, but there is a federal guideline in there as part of it. It was a study done for Falmouth that it was incorporated in there.
Secretary of the Interior's.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so that goes on for pages as to more generalized guidelines to be looked at for preservation. So there are a lot of these guidelines, but part of it is going to be, what are we going to adopt as a community? The HDC has adopted certain guidelines.
Okay, and does anybody know if the combination of the Historic District Commission and the Historic Committee will create a more cohesive management with these guidelines?
That's the hope.
And we want to task them with being more proactive about things, you know, sort of with what you're talking about, things like that.
Because it's the unpredictability, I think, is the
Right.
biggest
Right.
fear for people that own in the Historic District.
Yeah.
If you'll look in here, the Historic Districts Commission is throughout here, the Historical Commission is throughout here, that they're tasked to make it better, to put guidelines in place.
Number 3 addresses that.
Right.
Yes, Paul?
Well, it's pretty obvious a lot of work has gone into this, and I think there's a lot of good concepts here. I don't want any nitpicking, but there are a number of things I think we need to look at. One that Ralph pointed out, Historical Commission, Historic District Commission going to be combined. And there's some other areas why the Planning Board and Planning Department wouldn't be the same entity. I mean, basically, they work together, so I don't think I have to list both. But getting into some of these things, for example, the partner with Chamber of Commerce, obviously Chamber of Commerce is there because it's tourism related. And then you go down further with number 6, basically the architectural styles is an educational program, not necessarily tourism, because tourism is covered at the item before there. So I'm not sure the Chamber of Commerce would be involved in that particular one because they address it in the previous one, number 4. Plus there are other groups. There was a study done by a group of students at Boston University that came out with a report and did sort of an inventory of historical properties. It wasn't as comprehensive, as complete as it needs to be done in action item 1. But there was also a report done by a historical group out of Philadelphia that came up with some pretty good ideas, and one of their recommendations was the Historical Alliance, which has been set up in town. And as far as I know, they're still applying for their 401 designation.
And they've been very active in drafting these documents.
And they believe that they're,
Arbor
let me say,
Waves, it's
prime move of historical processes in town. I think they should be included.
They are. She sits at every one of our meetings and helped draft us all this language.
Well, it doesn't mention their group.
You
Well,
can't.
You can't.
They're
Believe
private
me,
group.
she,
We can't assign something to a private organization.
Okay, well, they're coming up, I thought, with some kind of designation. The point being that they are very active in trying to do
We
these sorts
know.
of things, both in terms of stopping some projects from not being developed to recommending things that I think are very worthwhile to be considered. So I think there's a lot of interest in this sort of thing. And I think it's a really good start. I think it could be streamlined a little bit to make it less complicated, but I think it's a very, very good start, and I think there's a lot of things that can be done here very, very effectively. We talk about the cultural district that the town has been pushing. That's clearly something that's integrated with this sort of thing, too. I think there's a real tremendous interest, and as the Falmouth Station comes on board by EDIC, I think that's going to generate even more interest in the historical preservation of items in town. Just a point of interest, I remember years ago, maybe 4 years ago, going to the Historic District Commission and asking them about the Falmouth Station. And I asked specifically, is this on the Historical Registry in Falmouth? They said, no. I said, why not? It's state property. I said, well, it's in state listing. They said, no. I said, why not? It's historic property. I said, well, it's in Falmouth. Shouldn't it be on that property? And they were not interested at all on it. Now, some of those same people are now on the Preservation Alliance, and clearly they're much more interested in it. But, you know,
Well,
properties in Falmouth
Paul, we're
ought to be
actually
considered.
we've actually addressed that, believe it or not. We're planning on talking about that. And one of the issues that the historic districts have is they draw a line in the sand. So if you're building, like for the bus station, the sign for the property is in the historic district, and the building isn't. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about and bring forward is if you're looking at the landscape approach and the whole thing, if in fact the first 100 feet of your property is in the historic district, maybe the whole thing should be, or everything you can see from the street should be, and not just have it be a line in the sand, an arbitrary line in the sand. And we are planning on bringing that forward to the historic group, or whatever you want to call them, and see if they want to change the bylaws. That's one of the ideas that we came up with, because there's some silly things that have happened with that line, where people in historic neighborhoods drop their buildings back 50 feet and build whatever they want. You know, it totally looks out of place.
Well, in my case, I have a home that's 100 years old this year. The edge of the property is in a historic district, short distance.
Yeah.
The building is not.
Right.
However, when I went to put an addition on, I used the same style. It's a kit style. And I continued with the kit style, even though it wasn't required, but I thought it was necessary. And I think it came out reasonably well. But what you're saying, it may have been a requirement
Well, it's not now, but we're talking about,
in the future.
That's number two.
one of the options that we wanted you know, again, we just give advice to the historic group. They're gonna make their own decisions. They don't report to us. You know, this is a plan where we kind of point the direction, say, this is the way we should go, but other people actually have to do it. So that's one of the things exactly we're recommending to them, that exact issue you brought up, as we've discussed many times.
Now, please remember what has to be voted by town meeting is the goal and the policy, so I really would like you to pay specific attention to those. See whether you think they've covered everything, whether they're good, not good, what, on that.
So that's the
Because
first paragraph here.
Yeah, insofar as the narrative and the action items, they can be changed at any time.
How about respect and preserve? Respect its rich historic culture, but
There was a reason, we flipped that back and
Oh,
forth
yeah.
and back and forth and back and forth. The current comprehensive plan is so backwards looking, it's dragging its feet into the past, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to say, you've got to respect what the past is, but please don't put the brakes on and say we can't do anything for the future.
Ralph?
Yeah, is there, and I don't recall reading anything in here about it, and I'm not just sure where it would be appropriate, but how about some kind of an action item, because it might just be a one-time deal, but there's so much turnover in the real estate brokers, inventory. But I'm wondering that if real estate brokers couldn't use maybe a handout or something that would help them when they're talking to prospective buyers in Falmouth, help them navigate their way through what's involved if you buy a home in a historic district.
Well, I always suggest that they should go to the right real estate broker. They
I
have
know
a
you
problem.
would, yeah. But I mean, there's so many
I think you
in
should
town.
recuse yourself right now.
I don't know, I'm
Sorry.
just thinking you might want to add that as an action item, that
Actually,
that someone develop
That
a,
would be something that the Historic
Yeah.
Commission could develop.
And that's a good
Right.
idea, because a lot of people have no idea what they're getting into.
right, so if you made an action item and had the responsible party
Yeah.
being the
Historic.
historical commission,
Yeah.
historic commission.
Action item 11.
Yeah.
Huh?
Action item 11.
Well, I mean, that's
No, it's a good idea, Rob.
it's a suggestion, because my guess is that
That's all the action items.
a lot of brokers aren't really familiar with it, what's involved.
I'm just making a shorthand note here, create a real estate brochure, and we'll work on the wording on that. Does anybody have any comments further? Doug wanted to know why we didn't have all of a sudden the word just goes away.
Preserve.
Preserve in the goal. And I explained why. We specifically kept ourselves away from that word as holding us too far back in the past.
What was the word? What was it?
Preserve.
I
Oh,
said it
preserve.
We
on
took
the-
the word preserve in and out about 10 times.
On the
I
goal,
see.
on the goal, I thought it
Okay,
said,
okay.
Falmouth will respect and preserve its.
Yeah, I
rich
see, right.
historical
That was there. But we wanted to be able to go forward with designs while still respecting this historic past. And that's, we wrestled with that.
Okay.
And we can still continue to wrestle.
I want to wrestle one more time.
Go ahead.
So you would like,
Would you like to put it back?
I feel like it should be.
Well,
in
the thing
there.
is, that's, we only bring it to this board. And then you guys, the authority is the
You-
board.
You can still preserve your historic culture.
Back in.
Without, coming
Digging
to a
in.
complete standstill.
okay.
I think it's okay. I know it's okay, that's
Paul
okay.
wants to take it out.
I want to take it.
I think the first policy needs to be Falmouth shall strive to preserve its historic structures. I mean, that's what we're talking about. I think that is a priority. That's what we're trying to do. And if you wanted to combine that with number one there and just say, by building support and historic preservation continue, but I think the operative is we want to preserve its historic structures, and I think that should be the operative. It should be right up front.
See, that's what it always comes about is structure, and we're talking about more than structure. Where the heritage landscape approach, the heritage approach, it takes in the environment, it takes in landscaping, it takes in scenery. There's a lot more.
Stone walls.
Stone
Stone
walls.
walls.
I mean, it takes in a lot more than just structures, and we didn't want to limit it to structures.
Well, those of us who haven't been involved in a subcommittee don't know your discussions. so-
Right.
This is why we're,
Well, but that's where we have to bring it to you, because this board is the one that takes it forward, not us.
So
so,
that's all the more reason to keep all the wording the same except adding preserve.
so what you're saying, Paul, is you want to see policy number 4 brought up.
Yeah, I think
Front and
that's what we're
center.
trying to do. And maybe it should say historic structures and, not structures, but some other verbiage that refers to the issues that Bob is talking about.
It's historic structures and landscapes.
Structures
See, I
and
think you need to
landscape.
build the support first,
Yeah, I
which is
think
why
we-
we put it there.
You're right, it is more than structures.
Again, we do wrestle with the placement of all of these things, sort of like a descending order. And all of the action items should flow out of these policies and goals. But I'm hearing you, and we
So
can,
Paul, what you're saying is policy number 4, you want it moved up to policy number 1, basically.
And modify structures and whatever else we're going to call it. But that's the opposite.
Structures and landscapes? Or, what else do you want to put in there?
Maybe we should say preserve
Structures,
historic resources.
Or how about
Is that
structures,
comprehensive enough?
landscapes, and settings?
And the resources could be structures, it could be landscape, it could be walls, it could be.
I like
another-
resources.
Well, policy 2 already states heritage landscape approach to development, redevelopment, and historic preservation.
I think we captured it. I think
Yeah.
Paul is having problems
Yeah.
with the placement
Priorities,
of it,
yeah.
the priorities of it.
Well,
Remember, this is step 1, bringing it before you folks.
I'll let you move it up 1.
when's the next, I'm coming to the next
It's not going
meeting.
all the way to the top.
I'm coming to the next meeting, somebody has to drop out so I can go to the meeting.
We've got,
Hey, we've gone around and around and around. If you want to come, I'll gladly skip the meeting one time and let you do it.
Has Corey helped, I imagine.
He
yeah.
does.
Yeah.
That's his thing, so I imagine he's involved with
Yeah.
that.
And graduation tonight.
Oh, really? Good.
Okay, I think we beat this for enough. You guys all set?
Well, do you have any comments about the narrative?
Yeah.
Did you read it through? Do you have any comments about that?
Can I mark it up and give it to you?
Yes.
Surely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you
great.
can.
Yeah.
'Cause
It'll
we
be
really-
graded.
Yeah, we really want to have this in shipshape form before we meet with the selectmen. I believe, that's not yet scheduled, but it's anticipated
Sometime in
July. Yeah, so we really do want to have it. I'm happy to bring it back to you again after we look at that. But you promise you're going to get me changes? Okay.
Well, it's pretty obvious. There's been a lot of work put into this. That's why I mentioned
We
I'm
knocked this out
nitpicking.
in an hour. What are you talking about?
Well,
We'll
this-
accept all written comments. We're going to move on to the next issue right now, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next
Historic
issue
as we sit here.
is the introduction to the housing element. I had asked Corey to please run off copies of everything that has been approved as it stood on our website. And he did that, and all of a sudden, it was right smack in our faces that the housing element was not in a PDF form, even though it was on the planning website, and there was no narrative. So even though town meeting voted the policy, the goal and the policies, we hadn't finished it, and I think this was all lost in the transition when Marlene left and we hadn't finished it up. So, the narrative is really what you're looking at, knowing that all the rest of it, the goal and policies, were already approved by town meeting. So we're looking for your input on the narrative.
Yes, we've all been through it so much.
Okay,
We're-
I
we're
read
really-
through this housing policy here, and I thought it was remarkable. Each one of those, I thought, built on the others. I thought it was step-by-step process of the different action items for implementation. I thought prioritize, monitor, strengthen, innovative zoning, all those things I thought were very logical and very progressive, and I thought that was very well done there. I think, again, we need to talk about who the responsible parties are going to be. I think we may want to look at those a little more carefully, but that's, again, nitpicking. But I thought each of those items, I thought was very well presented there and expressed very nicely. So I compliment you on that. The hardest part is going to be innovative financing programs.
Oh, we know that.
But I think it has to be there. And I don't know how far that's going to go because it's going to be a very contentious issue. But I think that's a very important element there that we ought to at least try to address. May not get to it, but we should try to bring it up.
Anything on the narrative?
Yeah, I did have a lot of questions.
We can keep the file open for written comments for the next 2 weeks.
I was a little troubled by the thing that Falmouth may have to look at economic constraints to create balance in the market.
We don't have a unanimous vote on our
I'm a
committee
little
on that
uncomfortable
issue.
with that. That's, maybe Mr. Trump can help us with that one. But that's
We already have them.
a mouthful.
And I don't know, we've done various forms on that, and when you think about it, we already have those constraints with the 40B, the fixed. You're signing on if you are in one of the affordable units to be constrained already.
Are we off the historic character narrative?
Yeah, we're in the
on
housing
element.
document.
Yeah.
And-
And it was, I'm sorry, it was something I threw in because it's in your face, because it needs to be there.
The other thing that jumped out at me about promoting diverse neighborhoods and vibrant social interaction, I don't think there's a social development type program. I think it's housing and the social activities will come as a result of that. But I'm not sure that's something we should be pushing, vibrant social integration. That strikes me as something Bernie would come up with.
The reason we put that in there, just for your thought process, is that when we were talking about increased density, we're talking about the mixed-use development, like we have here on Main Street, and you notice the huge difference that we've had in the citizen use of the downtown area. They're always out there. Even during the winter, people are out there on the streets enjoying what we have. So we're looking for that and increasing density, which maybe we should have put in building front porches will be required too. Who knows? You know, to get the sociability going more instead of everybody like this walking down Main Street, not looking or talking to anybody. One of the innovative designs that we're talking about, very difficult, but cottage communities, where you have sort of like a center courtyard area that would increase knowledge of your neighbor. So that's why we put what we did, it will promote diverse neighborhoods and increase social interaction.
We talked about that most of our growth should be really village-centric, you know, that we're going to looking at the clusters of the villages and try to develop around there, because that's where our transportation hubs are, that's where the utilities are, that's where the sewer is and will be, and the schools, and as opposed to developing farther out and basically sprawling over the whole town. But we talked about, one of the things we talked seriously about is restricting development further out. You know, I guess one of the things that's been brought up is the zero net growth aspect. Is as we put sewers in these places, my understanding is we've signed some financing agreements that require us to, if we put greater density in one place, we have to, take it away someplace else.
Yeah.
So village centers is what we're talking about, smaller communities.
And also,
close
too,
together.
looking down the road, you look at millennials and the younger generation, they like a better sense of community. They're not like our generation that just wanted to build our little isolation units and never see anybody. They like to be in a more communal space where they want to be able to walk places as opposed to having to drive places or bike places. So that's what we're looking at, is promoting those types of developments.
And maybe that should be one of the action items, encourage developers to create that kind of environment. And the case in point is Mashpee Commons.
Yep.
That's been very successful, and they're expanding it quite a bit. But the developer's doing that, so maybe this thing should have another action item, encourage development in these kinds of conditions you're talking about, open space, community space, and those kinds of things. And I think if we get back on track with the housing, more developers will come in here and do those sorts of things. Right now, as you well know, there's a lot of confusion as to the housing groups in town, what they're trying to do, and it came up this morning at the EDIC meeting as well. But I think housing is a very important element, and the town is looking at getting a housing coordinated in some fashion. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but they're talking about CPC funding and a number of other things. And at the CPC meeting last Thursday night, we spent a lot of time talking about housing, how we might be able to encourage housing, because we're not getting the applications for CPC funding in the housing category that's required every year at 10%. So there's been discussion at various levels. Sam Patterson, the selectman, has attended our meeting. I know he's been having discussions here in this building on the same sort of thing, and it came up today again at the EDIC. So there's a lot of interest in this sort of thing. So I think we should encourage that as well.
How would you put that? I'm sorry, I didn't take a note on your wording.
Encourage potential developers to create housing opportunities that provide open space and community activities, something like that.
Okay.
I think
Well,
you're a better
cluster,
wordsmith than I.
you know, like cluster developments?
Yeah. And encourage them to do that sort of thing.
So,
The problem is that, with 40B housing, we might get 40B housing, but it doesn't necessarily help Falmouth because it'll become a statewide, and someone from out of state can come in and do these houses. And that's okay, because that's part of the way the program is, but we want to encourage people in Falmouth to stay in Falmouth and to perhaps come to Falmouth and provide economic opportunities elsewhere.
Yes, Doug?
You know, since we've had the housing study, a lot of folks across town have taken a lot of initiative to try to develop ideas and solutions for housing. But the number one thing that we haven't done is to work together and coordinate. Everybody's, one person's doing something over here, another group's doing something over here. And that was one of the main points of the housing study, was that we need to consolidate our efforts and get some leadership from the top to put our forces together, to put our heads together. And we're still on that sort of individual track.
That was the last, maybe that should have been way up at the first, Doug, to organize a housing summit to create a strategic plan for implementing tasks and increasing cooperation and communication between parties interested in housing issues.
I think-
Haven't we already had the housing summit?
Yeah, I don't think it's a summit, I think it's a management style. It's a
So,
leadership.
Well, maybe
initiative.
this thing that the selectmen are talking about, the housing coordinator, is part of it.
Well, that would be good.
Yeah.
If something comes of that.
Because that is exactly the problem, is,
Right.
Well,
You know,
let's put that
leadership.
on the
Yeah.
agenda then to discuss with the selectmen.
Mhm.
Reinforcing that idea, maybe put some little weight behind it.
Right.
Remember, if we don't like this idea of the housing summit, we can flip that out and put another
Yeah.
one in there.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't want
Place
to just
of it.
talk about it again. I want to try to make a permanent infrastructure that's more manageable.
I would actually like to see, I haven't seen it, I've heard about it, what the selectmen have as a job description for this housing coordinator person. That's-
Thursday night is 6 to 7 o'clock, right?
Right.
Thursday night from 6 to
Yeah,
7
the library.
at the library.
Okay, they're gonna have a discussion on it,
Yep.
Yeah.
This week.
televised?
Well, I
I'll
don't
have to
know.
ask Jeff, he's filming.
It's possible.
What has happened at the community development meeting last week, there was a subcommittee on housing, they drafted a letter to the Board of Selectmen, and it was a 2.5-page letter identifying all these different things. And I was asked for my opinion, and quite frankly, my comment was, I thought it was a little defensive, which didn't sit very well. And I said, I think you have to be specific about what you want. And they were talking about this kind of a summit, getting a meeting, and all these people involved. And I said, look, if you want to have a meeting, the Board of Selectmen are very much in favor of housing. They're very much in favor of dealing with this issue, but they have other things on their plate. It hasn't risen to a level where they can do something. So why don't you ask for a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen to specifically talk about the housing and how CPC can support the housing element in town? Well, Sam Patterson was there, he talked about it, and I understand he went to town manager and others, and out of those discussions, they came up with this idea of a housing coordinator rather than letter. So CPC put away the letter, and they're trying to work out something, and I don't know what the scope of work looks like or anything, but there was some discussion about CPC funding for that. In fact, it went further where the CPC subcommittee said, well, they can't get it on the agenda for November because it doesn't reach the level of the emergency funding for this particular year. But there is money in the housing fund that conceivably could be used for that. But there's something going on down the hall here, and I don't know what that is, and I think we should let that play out a bit and just enhance it and encourage it, because I think there's a lot of interest on it, on all parties. And I think it's coming to a head, whatever that means.
So, Pat, are we ready to vote on the element, or are we gonna bring it back one more time?
Well,
I
we're
wanna
probably
move
going to
along.
bring it back one more
Okay,
time, I
so we're
think.
gonna take another shot at it and come back. I'd like to move along, is that all right with everybody?
And are you okay, though, with this? Because remember, that was all voted, the narrative for the
Yes, the
housing.
narrative's all voted.
Paul, you're not, I know.
Well, Paul, why don't you give us your written
I
comments
will give you
on-
some comments.
on it.
Okay.
We'll see what we can do.
And we, as a group, don't meet until next Wednesday.
When's your
so-
next meeting?
Next Wednesday.
So we're not meeting tomorrow, right?
I personally like both narratives.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Thank you, Doug.
Next is general correspondence. I have one letter in the file. It's received from the Board of Health, basically stressing how important they feel our support of the 2015 bike plan is, which we've already voted to support. So, I mean, it's kind of just a follow-up saying, yes, they agree with us.
From the health department?
Yes, about how exercise and cycling and the importance of it, how great it is. We all agree. We've incorporated complete streets in our thought process planning at every site review. Hopefully, we asked where the bike thing was when you guys were there without me, that plan was supposed to ask the every site review where the bike's gonna go? Oh,
We grilled them, don't worry.
Oh, yeah, we want bikes all the way.
okay.
Did you notice? Oh, yeah. You didn't.
No, we didn't ask about biking to the bank, it's true.
But
But I thought, I thought it was gonna be on a
I noticed the
checklist.
racks.
Yeah, I know it's there.
Yeah.
I know it's there. I made it be put there, but you didn't ask.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be on our checklist.
Okay.
Right? You agreed to it when we said that at the joint meeting, Brian.
That's fine. Yeah, we,
It'll be on the next one.
We'll work on that with the PowerPoint.
Yeah. Future agenda items. I know what I brought up at the EDIC today, and I'd like to, it doesn't have to be right away, but I want to start thinking about identifying parcels of land for light industrial C. You know, we created the district and we've assigned it to, we had a petitioner put one and we've assigned it to another, but I think now we should look at a greater area
I agree with you.
because this needs are still there.
Right.
And I can tell you, it's, for me, it's been an amazing journey to start off talking about it first years ago, assigning the district, talking about all the areas where it could have gone, the years we spent, then to actually be a petitioner and bringing the landfill. And we signed the lease yesterday and the project is underway. And it's just, it wouldn't have happened if we hadn't created that zoning district.
Can we broaden that to just industrial land discussion?
Well, we talked about that. We think we have to be careful because the other uses, a lot of the industrials have residential use, and light industrial C doesn't.
Right.
And the idea is blending that carefully. But we
Well, we
could
talked-
rezone areas that are industrial that don't have housing on them now, making them light industrial C, and therefore making it work.
Another thing on our to-do list is to create the multifamily housing and possibly eliminate housing from the industrial.
Yes, that would solve the whole problem.
So we,
But the problem is, in a lot of industrial areas are already developed with
Right.
housing, and if we
But
allowed ground-mounted solar arrays as an accessory use, it could quite change the neighborhood.
my point is that I'd like to continue the discussion, I don't want to butt in on your agenda item, but at some point, we should also discuss industrial land in total, because we're really lacking in that. We could use to have some manufacturing space and some actual type of jobs like that. I mean, you have that in Hyannis. I don't want to just be just like Hyannis, but I would like at least a smaller version of something somewhere if possible. And I think our current industrial park could possibly be expanded if we think about it.
There is some talk, that's all it's been is talk, for a couple years. But,
And that's what planners should do,
yeah,
right?
got it.
you got it? That's on a future agenda item. Anybody else? Next meeting, May 24th. Everybody all set for that?
I move adjournment.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.